What's up, everybody? This is Jimmy with Trading Decoded. It is April 8th, 2024, and happy Eclipse Day. Today's market was funky after the morning-ish, kind of tightened up a bit and got into a situation where it could start costing you money if you're on the wrong side of things. But we did catch a banger of a trade to the downside, a banger of a trade to the upside, then another banger of a trade to the downside, and then she flattened out. So we're going to go talk about the trades that we found today, and we're going to talk about the one that I took today because that was a big one for a lot of people. That was the only trade that they took today. Guys, let me just remind you that if you can go to work, make a day's pay in the first 30 minutes of work, and then you can leave with that day's pay. Wouldn't that be nice? You know, understanding that if you continue to work and you make a mistake, that they're going to take some of that day's pay away from you, which is over trading sometimes does, or oftentimes does, most of the time does. But I digress. Let's go ahead and take a look at the chart and see what she gave us today. Pre-market was a little funky until around 8 o'clock, and then she started to trend up. We hit a very, very solid resistance line at 519.86, which was our call line. By the way, we would be waiting for a candle close above that line before we take calls. Our put line was a breach of 519.24 to the downside. Now, that breach did come just before pre-market or just before market open. So we wanted to wait for a pullback, make sure Qs and SPY stayed below 519.37. Qs, oh yes, I'm going to explain to you all these lines in just a second. Okay, but Qs needed to stay below their pre-market low line of 441.60. If that's the case, hold on to your puts and let's see where she goes. This entire trade was talked about, called out, and discussed through its entirety, all the way down to the support where we ultimately took our profits. For those of you who got in on this candle and sold out on this candle, congratulations. That was about a 75 to 80% trade. How do I know? Well, because I was in it and talking our entire community through the whole trade. A lot of people got out early. A lot of people got out mid-trade. A lot of people got all the way out down here. Why here? Because I was already up enough. I was trailing my stops. Again, verbally explaining everything in real time so that the folks who were trying to hold would understand why I felt comfortable holding that trade a little bit longer. And what it boiled down to was the Qs. I liked what the Qs were doing. They kept breaking levels of support and it kept paying us. And every time it broke a support, it turned what was support into resistance. And as long as it stayed below that resistance, I was going to continue to hold on to that trade. And then the Qs made it all the way down to, well, a pretty solid support level. Now, what makes you decide whether to take profits at any one of these? Well, for me, it was SPY just getting down to a point where SPY was going to hit its support before the Qs were. And I said, you know what? This is a good enough trade. This is a one and done for me. If we get to that 518.09 line, which was orange at the time, so we were talking about it all the way up here, I'll take my profits and I'll be done with the trade and done for the day. That's exactly what I did. That's exactly what it did. Now, in hindsight, pretty awesome because that was essentially the low of day for the most part, low of day support anyway. Well, that line has been there since 8 o'clock in the morning, 8:30 in the morning. With that said, that was a one and done for me. 74% winner for me, which was a great trade. We pull back. People are asking, hey, Jimmy, is this a good point for resistance? Is this a pullback? I said, well, let's take a look at the Qs. Now, let me hide some of these white lines here for a minute because let's see here. There we go. What we were looking for was Qs to be pulling back to resistance as well. Now, the question for resistance a lot of times is, what's resistance? It really depends. It comes down to you. So all of these lines are drawn. You might say to yourself, hey, I'm not going to trust any line of support and resistance unless it's one that we've already drawn. A lot of you might not trust the idea that resistance in the form of this is a resistance. That might not be good enough for you. Okay. Old support oftentimes becomes resistance. That might not be good enough for you. It doesn't matter what you see. What matters is that whatever you're using as your justification for the trade is what makes you comfortable to take the trades that you take. Okay. I can only tell you what I'd be interested in doing. Now, I was very clear and adamant about the fact that this is the only trade I'm going to take today, but I'll stay here with you guys all day and we'll see if we can find some better opportunities. We pulled back to resistance around 945, 946. At that time, Qs were at a resistance level. Guys, this is an opportunity to take a trade if you believe that the move is going to continue down or go back down to where it was before. We're at resistance. It's clearly trying to act as resistance. SPY's at resistance. We broke this trend line if you wanted to wait for that. But the key here is if you're going to take this trade, you better make sure the Qs stay below 440.64 and SPY stays below its pre-market midline. That's it. Pretty tight stops. Our target was hopefully back down to 518.09. You put in a higher low. Consider taking your profits here, or you take your profits when you get to the first line down. That's totally up to you. It does not matter to me. Either way, buy at resistance, sell at a support level. If you want to hold for more, simply move your stops down, trail it. We hope this support breaks and we make it back down to the next one. Awesome. It didn't do it this time, but it almost did it here the second time. Then we started to get disconnected from Qs and SPY. So I started to tell people after this higher low right here, guys, I am no longer interested in taking trades between two specific levels. Now, let me slide this over, okay, because we started talking about this right here. This red box is now a no trade zone for me. Why? Because Qs are putting in higher lows and higher highs, and at the time, SPY wasn't moving up yet. I'm not going to play against the Qs, guys. I say this every single day. Now, if I can't see SPY following the Qs, I just assume not take a trade. Okay? Now, what I did say is, as long as we get above 519.37 on SPY and Qs get above, what would we say? What was the equivalent on that? 1026. Qs can breach above this resistance right here. This is what it was. If Qs were above 441.34 minimum and SPY could get above this red box, I'd be interested in calls and I would take them to our original call line, was the exact words. Told everybody down here, guys, we talked about this trade all the way back here at 10 o'clock. Okay, so here you are 26 minutes in advance. If you took the trade, you got paid. If you didn't, I'm sorry for your luck. Guys, it's not my job to push your buttons. I can't do that. I can only tell you what would make me feel comfortable in executing a trade myself. Well, Jimmy, why wouldn't you buy all the way down here? Because there was too much resistance up there. Okay, I want to make sure that that resistance that got us into and kept us into these puts is no longer a problem for me. That's all. So I would need a candle close above that, and I want to see the Qs continue up and getting above their resistance right here. Okay? That was it. That was the criteria. Both of them were true at this point. We got the close above. Up we go to our call line. That was it. Okay? About a 50-cent move. That usually pays around 30% return on your money. I'll take that in just what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4.5 minutes? It's not a bad return. Then we struggled to get higher. Not interested in calls up here. Why not? Because we hadn't had anything here that made me feel like that was a good thing to do. And Qs were also struggling at that first line there. And Qs were up against that level as well. No, thank you. Well, when would you buy puts, Jimmy? First, you better make sure the Q's uptrend is over. Okay, that doesn't happen until 11 o'clock, 11:02. Okay, finally SPY starts to break down. We start putting in lower highs, lower lows. I said, guys, we broke and closed below 519.37. If you're interested in buying a pullback, double check to make sure Qs are at a level of resistance and trending down. That's all we're looking for. Okay, Qs started trending down, putting in lower highs, lower lows, and they pulled back to a level of resistance. Whether you took it here or what we were talking about was old support turning into resistance. You could have got in at any one of these 3 or 4 candles and taken advantage of this continued move down. Now, the beauty is if we close above that line of support or resistance rather, stop yourself out of the trade. If you want to use the line that you were buying at on this SPY, our stop loss on this was a candle close above 519.52. Okay, so that's about a 12-cent stop loss. Otherwise, we're looking for the move to continue down. Where are we expecting it to go? Right here. We talked about this entire trade before it became a trade and where we expected it to go if it did. Support right there, clear as day. Okay, we get through. We bust our way down straight to that line, not once, not twice. On the second time, you had your opportunity. It pulled back. We're still putting in lower highs. Guys, you're still in this trade. You might get another opportunity to get out at the same place. There's your third opportunity. Fourth and fifth. Still lower highs. Great. Maybe this support fails and we can continue to move down. What I wouldn't do, though, made this abundantly clear, both to the upside and the downside, is if your inputs, whenever you got into them, what I wouldn't do is hold through that line of day or that low of day. Support at 518.09. Well, why not, Jimmy? Because I've got nothing on this chart to make me believe that I should hold past that line. In fact, the only thing on this chart that makes me believe I shouldn't is right there. I know there's a pocket of buyers there. How do you know, Jimmy? Because what happened the last time we touched it? But what if this time's different? What if it's not? You guys can argue with me and have this conversation with me any time of the day. If I'm getting into calls, just like I told them way before this, if you get into calls because we break above that red box, I would suggest you take your profits at 519.86. Why? For the same reasons that I wouldn't hold my puts through that bottom line down there. Evidence tells me that it doesn't like that line. It does not want to be up there. If you're going to hold through either one of those lines, I'm going to ask you to simply tighten up your stops in case it rejects and comes down hard. You don't give up too much of your profits. Okay? That was the last trade we talked about, guys. Everything after that, people were wanting to watch the eclipse. People were wanting to, get out of a specific range. Now, the last thing we're going to talk about here is not how do we trade a thing like this, but why I don't trade something that looks like this. But more importantly, why I don't trade later in the day. You guys, by you guys, I mean anybody who doesn't trade support resistance, okay? Because I can't talk. If you're trading support resistance, then you can't ignore what I'm about to say. And you probably side with me in this thought process. I get asked constantly, Jimmy, with your win rate, why don't you continue to trade throughout the entire day? If you're here on the mic and you're talking to people, why don't you just take some of these trades? I'm about to show you what the chart looks like to me that keeps me out of taking trades. You see this chart right here? Looks nice and non-chaotic. You see this? All these lines. Yeah, look, there's a lot of room between them. You want to know what this chart looks like just a little bit later in the day? You see all that? Now, if I were to open my chart in the morning and shared with my community that this is our levels for the day, there is not one sane person that would say, oh, hell yeah. Hells yeah. I'm going to trade the hell out of that chart. Not one. Guys, the later in the day we go, the more these white lines show up. This is what keeps me away from trading later in the day. It's not that they can't be broken or breached. It's just that I would have to break my own trading rules to start to trade through them. If I trade support and resistance, and I've plotted every line of support and resistance on a chart, where is there enough room for me to take a trade? There's not. One of my rules is if I don't have at least 20 cents of space between my entry and my profit target, then I am not going to take the trade. Sorry, somebody's ringing my doorbell. However, if there exists enough space for that, then I would take the risk. So later in the day, if I was going to take any trade, the first spot we have a 20-cent potential is a break above 441.72, hoping to get to 441.97. If we were going to take a trade to the downside, we wanted to be below 440.05, getting to 439.76. There's nothing else to look at for me. Now, if you trade crossovers or any of that other stuff, well, then you're on your way. Guys, give me a second. I got to pause this. Sorry about that, guys. I'm not even sure where I left off, but I just had to answer my front door, and that ended up turning into a 30-minute conversation. So with that, I think I was talking about how there's nothing on this chart that I would trade. This is why I don't trade this late in the day. I can't unsee these lines, and for me to trade as if they don't exist would mean that I have to break every rule that I follow to make the trades that I make comfortably. That's just not something I'm prepared to do or willing to do. So it's unnecessary risk for me, especially if I've made the money that I need to make on a much cleaner chart at a much earlier time of the day. More trading doesn't equal more money. In fact, the more you trade per day, the higher your win rate will suffer. Okay, the more your win rate will suffer. I have yet to find a single person that has told me otherwise, and I'm not assuming this. This is years of me asking people personally if they find that the more trades they take per day, if their win rate increases. Not a single person has ever said yes. With that, I hope you all had a fantastic day today. I also hope you got some valuable information out of this video. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe. I'd appreciate it. If you'd like to join our Discord community, well, we'd love to have you. There's a link down below. We are not a call-out service, okay? I will explain to you where our call put line is in the morning. We have one every day. I'll explain to you why I would be interested in taking these trades. And almost every one of these trades I do take. So you don't have to ask if I'm taking them or not. The only time I don't take the call put scenario is when I tell you I am not going to prior to being in it. Meaning I'll tell you guys in advance, hey, I know it looks like we're going to cross our put line, but I don't like it. I'm not going to trade it. And here's why. Okay, if I don't say that, I'm taking the trade because I believed in it in the first place. Otherwise, I wouldn't have put that line on the chart where I put it to begin with, right? The only time my entry would deviate from those lines is if I'm looking at the cues and I'm seeing something that makes me not want to buy it, i.e., if we're coming down to this line looking like we're going to breach it, but cues are sitting on a line of support, no thank you. Okay, we had a person in our group today take a late day trade, getting into a SPY call when Qs were like 10 cents away from a resistance line, which is right here, as a matter of fact. And I used her as an example to show why I don't trade this late in the day and what you need to be looking for if you're going to. Right? If there's not a potential for movement on Qs and SPY at the same time, it's better to just skip the trade. You should be looking for higher probability chances of winning, not higher probabilities of risk. Every trade involves risk, but if you get into a trade when you don't have the potential for movement up or down other than you want it to, you need to consider waiting or not taking the trade at all. It's going to force you to take fewer trades. It's going to force you to make for the right setups before you take a trade, but that's what you need. Stop doing what isn't working. Do less. Less is more. All right? Lastly, check us out, guys. Give us a chance. Give us the free week. If you don't like what we do in there, then don't stay. You're not going to hurt my feelings. But if you think that you could learn something from us as a community, by all means, take advantage of the free week. Jump in there, see if it's for you. If it's not, thanks for trying it. If it is, consider becoming a paying member. And that's pretty much it. So we're going to wrap it up. Hope you all had a fantastic day. Till tomorrow, I love you guys. See ya.